We want to figure out what's key to keep leading the worldwide integrated tourism business. Let's hear about the fact-based transformation at TUI with enterprise architect at TUI, Kati Gholam.
Thank you. So, I haven't done this before. It sounds a bit echoey. Okay. I'll get used to it. So, a little bit about TUI to start off with, because it matters to what we do. So what are we made of? We have, if you like, two completely different parts of TUI. On the left, you have what they call the sales and marketing. It's really offensive to us who are there. And on the right, you have the holiday experiences in this diagram. So the holiday experiences are things like our cruises and our hotels, the airlines, all the things that actually deliver a holiday experience, as opposed to on the left, the source markets, the place where the customers come from. So this is almost two quite different organisations working together. And we are seen as the source of all the revenue and all the sales, which is quite hard for us, because that puts us in the position of being in competition with people like Booking.com that you saw. So, you know, we are the incumbent, and here come Booking.com yapping at our heels and stealing all our customers and so on. So, what do we do with architecture? Well, let's look at how we're shaped. So, TUI is mostly based in the UK, all over in the UK and Europe, all over Europe. We have the northern region, which is where I'm based. I'm from the UK and which also includes the Nordics and, incidentally, Canada and Russia, but we don't actually have so much to do with them. So primarily the north is the UK and Ireland and the Nordics. We then have a central region, which is Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Poland. We have a western region, which is Netherlands, Brussels. That's not right, is it? Belgium. That's the place we're looking for. And and France. So we have these three regions working together, which are all the source markets. We all have slightly different ways of working, different cultures around the organisation. So you've got a very much more traditional organisation in Germany and in the UK, and a much more forward-thinking. You think our Nordic market is based in Stockholm. Well, exciting things happen in Stockholm, like Spotify and so on. So this is quite a different culture and quite challenging for us to work with them. So just a little bit about the UK, because I have to put this slide in, because it's about my company, and whenever we present, we have to talk about TUI and how great we are, how fantastic our holidays are. So, but we are the biggest in the UK, and what have we got? We've got a brand new aeroplane there. This one was delivered just this week. The most recent cruise ship we have. These things are a little bit different in the UK because most of the source markets don't actually deliver cruises. But we do, so that's something we do. It's a bit unique. And we have shops in the UK, and not all of our markets do that. So those are the things that are a bit different. But essentially, the markets do the same thing. They source the customers and send them off on TUI holidays. Okay, so that's a bit about us. But what about architecture, and what about what we do, and what about how TUI's journey is going? So I joined TUI nearly 2 years ago, in 2016. And I joined a company that was completely process-led. So everything that we did in the UK was big projects. We'd been through something quite painful. Coincidentally, their project was called Project Phoenix. If you've read the Phoenix project about Agile, it was the Phoenix project. I wasn't there for that, but I've talked to people who were, and that's just what it was like. It was really, really painful. But if you haven't read it, by the way, you should. It's a good book. However, they were beginning to think about change. So TUI's just starting to get on the journey of needing to go and do something a little bit different. But it's quite hard for them to do. So all of the projects there, big budgets, big controls, really tight financial controls. The managing director of the UK was an accountant. Tells you a little bit about how the organisation was and how tightly controlled it was. We had really functional projects, very tight tightly scoped roles. The way the IT department was chopped up was we had an engineering department, we have a portfolio management department, we have architecture department, that was us, little tiny department, that one, service delivery and so on. So it was all very much functionally split, and that's the way it was put together. And we spent a lot of time doing tight resource management, making project plans, all the stuff that wastes money and wastes time, so frustrating. I'd just come from Tesco, actually, previous organisation, who'd been through an agile transformation, and I was really keen to see TUI move closer towards what we'd seen at Tesco, but meeting a lot of resistance. Every single project required initial solution architecture, PowerPoint deck, this template, you know the stuff, full solution architecture, every single process, every interface, everything defined, before you could even start working on your project. Really painful. So, not only that, within our architecture department, we had mostly SharePoint, mostly spreadsheets. That's really just what it was made of. But we got LeanIX. So somebody with a bit of imagination went and acquired LeanIX, and we started to populate it. So we put in our applications from our application catalogue, we put in the capabilities, and we put in all the interfaces from the UK. And the UK were one of the first to put their data in. At the same time, the central market, Germany, put their applications in, but they put it in a separate instance. We'll come back to that later. But there we were in this controlled world, and then along came GDPR. Now, we heard this morning that GDPR was a bad thing, that it was all control and so on, but actually it has one huge benefit for Europe, which is you had to write everything down. You had to find out what you had. So in organisations where that hadn't been done very well, actually it was a bit of an opportunity to make sure that some of the stuff that hadn't been captured very well was captured, and that's how we saw it. So we started collecting the rest of the information that we didn't have. We didn't have a full set. By any means, we had very limited amounts of information. But we went out there and started finding out what we had so that we could engage with those members of the business who'd been doing other things on their own while IT was busy delivering this LeanIX project. There was quite a healthy alternative IT department doing their own IT, building all sorts of things in all sorts of places in technologies that weren't really very nice or very supportable, and then chucking them back over the fence to IT and expecting us to try and pick up and make them work. Very hard. So how do we do this GDPR? Well, we did use LeanIX in different ways in different markets. So in the Nordics, they had a really great use of it. They used the survey tool. I don't know if you've seen that or if you see the presentation that I believe is happening later, but basically you create your survey, Survey Monkey type thing, and you send it out to various people. You set up your roles against the applications, and you send it out for them to gather the data. Doesn't sound very great, what's special about that, but what's really special is it creates ownership of the applications. So this worked really well in the Nordics because our Nordic organisation was absolutely already in an agile world. So they had moved, already gone on their agile journey. They had product owners. And so they just sent all this stuff out to the product owners who owned the applications, and they completed the information, sent back their surveys, agreed what it was that they had and what state it was in, and actually it helped to engage that. And sadly, we didn't do that in the UK, didn't get that landed quickly enough, but it would have been a great thing to do, and we're doing it now to try and get that landed. The really important thing for the UK and what happened and was very powerful for us is I hope you can't read that because that's the shape of some of our nasty legacy stuff, but never mind. It's a data flow diagram. So we already had a bunch of applications and a bunch of interfaces, a bunch of data that flows between them, and you have to document all that for GDPR. Great, that's really quite boring. But if you can draw a diagram that says, this is what you have, this is what your world looks like, this is where your data goes, and you start with customer data and employee data because that's what you do for GDPR, but actually you go on to all the other things as well once you started, then you're starting a conversation. And this is the power that LeanIX gave us, was it enabled us to have those conversations with people about what they had. So what applications did they have? Have we missed one? Don't know. Well, enable people to draw on those diagrams. So present the diagram and see whether we got it right. You can draw them at multiple different levels of granularity. So you can do the really high level and talk to the senior guys, and then drill down into the detail to talk to the developers and so on, to get to different aspects of what you're trying to look at. But it enables you to have the conversations with people. It is a facilitator for that. And most importantly, it enables the red pen. I used to be a teacher. It was one of my careers before I came to do IT, and there's nothing like a red pen for a bit of power. You know, when you stand in front of a whiteboard and you draw your diagram and the other person comes along and they say, no, it's not like this, it's like that. And that's the way you have a conversation about architecture. But if you have a diagram that already exists, that you've set up that's based on the data, and somebody else comes along, effectively, that's their red pen. They can change what it is that your diagram is showing and say, no, that's not how it is, it's like this. One of the real challenges that we have, well, I'm sure everybody has in architecture, is architects like to argue. Who likes to argue? We all like to argue, don't we? Everybody likes to argue. It's what we do. It's all about discussing and arguing, and is it right? Is it the right thing to do, etc. So it enabled those arguments and facilitated the conversations that we wanted to have. So this is very appropriate. Sorry, since I've been permitted to bring my glass in, I shall have a drop. Following on from this morning's presentation, absolutely fantastic, talking about VUCA, talking about the changes that we have. This is one of my favourite diagrams. I don't know if you've seen the Clifton Framework. It's a great name too. You can really say that with energy, Clifton Framework. However, if you haven't seen it before, it's about the different way that you can deal with decisions in different environments, going from the bottom right side, the obvious environment where you know what's going on, and you can have this process-led decisions. You can follow best practice, you know how to work. Moving on to the more complicated decisions, which are governed by constraints. So these are the sorts of things that we used to have in IT. Maybe you'd have a program where you knew where all the beginnings and the ends were and what it was going to talk to and all the parts that made it change and so on. And that was okay, because you knew everything that made it work and it was in your control, and so you could control what it did. And the same with all the applications that you had. They were in your control. You could look out for them and make decisions about what they should be. But the world's moved on from them. And now we're into the world of much more complex decisions and complex understanding of our world. We don't have control. You have no idea what your website's going to run on. Is it on a phone? Is it on a tablet? Is it on a computer? Is it running in the space station? On a ship is appropriate for us, so it needs to be able to work without any connection. All of these things, so many different factors. You don't know what build you're going to get on the client's machine. It's just a nightmare. The world is so complex. And so you can't continue to make those decisions in the world where you know. You have to, as we talked about before, whatever we heard this morning on the VUCA world, you have to probe, to sense, to do experiments, to move forward, to understand what works and what doesn't work. And then you've got the really chaotic world. That's the world that Elon Musk is operating in, where you know nothing. You have no idea where you're going to go and what you need to do and how to make your decisions. So what were these this morning? You have the people who know what they're doing and the people who don't know what they're doing. And I guess the people that operating in the chaotic world are the people who don't know what they're doing, because who knows where we're going with that. So I talked about the structure of TUI a little bit and the different parts of the organisation, the delivery arm of creating the holidays and then the sales arm. And we're in a really difficult position, particularly in the UK. It used to be that the UK were the biggest market. We may be again, but Brexit's about to happen, maybe not. maybe, well, presumably. We don't really know what will happen to that, but probably it won't be good. There's lots of other things changing. The world is very hard. As I said, we've got all these people snapping at our heels, and so we have to go faster. We have to be more agile. We can't continue in this process-led world. We can't continue with the shit from yesterday. We've got to get rid of it. So, what do EAs need to do that? We have to look for all the places that we can remove the duplication. Well, actually, it's two quite different things. We need to look for the opportunities. Well, that's the really exciting bit. And then you also need to remove all the duplication, increase convergence, reduce costs, identify opportunities where you can save money. And to do that, you need to be able to compare apples with apples, compare one thing with another thing, different ways of looking at your world. And I described the different markets that we've had. So we've got the Nordics, very agile world. The West, fairly agile. Germany, pretty staid. UK, also pretty staid, pretty boring. So we had a number of different models here. I don't have that pointy thing, so I can wait. I want one of those with the light on it. That's a great idea. Definitely, I'll get one on that on Amazon tonight. So what do we have? These are our capability models. I'm sure you've all got capability models that you've created in your organization. They change really quickly as the world changes. But this is an example of the sorts of things that we have. So on the right-hand side in the corner, that grey and pastel colours, that's the UK model. How was that created? We had a consultant come in and go through all the detail of what are all the things that we do, generate all the processes, create this really detailed capability model down to 4 levels, and it was great. It was lovely. It was a big spreadsheet with all this data on it, and why? What you can do with it? Okay. But we allocated the applications to all the capabilities like you do when you're an architect, and it should help us to make decisions. Then you have on the top left-hand corner, this was the Nordic capability model, and we all got into a room and we tried to agree that we'd come to the same capability model. Can you see that little circle in the middle? That's called the Milky Way. If you go and look up Nordics Milky Way, you'll actually see all the stuff about the Nordics. They published all their capability model and made a big deal of it. But this is based on the customer, because that's what the Nordics do. They really get customers. They really understand what the customer wants, and they focus on the customer above all else. Never mind whether you can support the application. Maybe it's not so important if it's not perfectly scalable, but the customer gets what they want. A/B testing is king. Okay, that doesn't fit so well in the UK, where we're trying to save a bit of money. So that's a bit of a conflict that we have here between the two organisations working together. However, we've got the little circle in the middle with the colours, so we've got something in common. And then this bottom big one, this is the West, and you can see it's based on the one from the Nordics, and then they just changed a bit and added a few categories and so on. So there we have all these models trying to talk together, trying to get stuff to work together. And the single biggest project that we're working on within TUI architecture at the moment is to converge the markets. So the West are converging their 3 markets, and in the UK we are ramming together. I'm sorry, we're doing a really collaborative project to move the Nordics and the UK to work together. I say that a bit tongue-in-cheek. We are trying to, but actually that is so hard because the Nordics are already there. They've already got to the place that they need to be. They're already operating in an agile world, and not everything is perfect in their world. You know, I'm sure they have all the usual problems, things that go wrong, but they do have that relationship between the business and IT, and they work together and they collaborate, as opposed to what we have in UK and IT, which is we take commands from the business say, you will build this thing. Yes, business, we will do that. And that's horrible. It's a terrible way of working. We definitely don't want to continue doing that. I'm exaggerating for effect. It's not really quite that bad. But yeah, it's not great. So I had the job of trying to get people to talk to each other and come up with a common model. And we did. So how did LeanIX help us to do this? And this is it. This is our domain model. So we stopped trying to go down to the level of detail. And this is one of the things that LeanIX enabled us to do, was to be able to operate at a number of different ways of levels of granularity. So there we had the UK's complex model going down to 4 levels, and we had the Nordics, which really only had 1 level, and we had the West, which had 2, but okay, they were fine. And actually, they really were fairly similar. So we delved down into the fact sheets and we actually did some number crunching with all the data that everybody put into LeanIX against all their capabilities. Fortunately, we were all doing it in English. Well, we were in the Nordics and the West anyway. And so we actually were able to take some facts out of this and find the data that enabled us to find these domains. Why did that matter? Because the most important thing that an architect should do is to facilitate a conversation. I actually think that's the only thing we need to do. We write a lot of things down, we draw a lot of diagrams, we talk to people, but really we are facilitating a conversation between bits of the business to work out where we go next. What is the right direction for us to go? What's important? What is key? And if you have a common language, then you get to have those conversations more easily. It's exactly the same as with the diagrams that we were looking at before. That enabled the red pen. People can agree what they do and don't think is correct. And it's the same with this. So you say, what you're talking about? You create this domain, and our domains like customer identity and content, they're obvious. You know, nobody's going to argue with this. Nobody's going to argue with the words. They're really simple. It's just really high level. It's a word. You know, what are we doing? We're doing sales and customer basket. It's really obvious you need one of those. Everybody knows it, but nobody's writing it down and pointing to it. And so actually having this capability model gave us an ability to have conversations with the business in different markets. And we structured some of these things to say, well, what are the different types of groups of people? So, for example, you'll see my slightly tongue-in-cheek comments at the top about commercial, we make profit, and customer, we love customers, and sales, we create demand, because that's representing the tensions between the two. So it's saying that actually things that happen in sales, they're about creating demand, and there needs to be a distinction between sales and customer. We love the customer. I'm not going to cynically make every single contact with the customer a marketing contact, Ryanair. Yeah, so we actually distinctly make that. But it just enables some of those conversations to have that model. So what did we do with it? Well, we made a number of diagrams, because that's what you do, that's what architects do, don't they? They make diagrams. So we have now a single repository which enables comparison between the markets. So you can't read that, and that's deliberate, because my team said, no, you can't tell them all the applications we've got. Okay, fine. So it's very small. However, the top one is, which one's that? That's about business risk. No, it's the criticality of the applications. So you can see where we've got lots of different things, where we've got just few things. The bottom one, that's using a specific tag that we created, which was about the delivery model. So we wanted to know which were the software as a service applications, which were bespoke, etc. The red ones are the bespoke ones, and the green ones are the nice software as a service ones that, in theory, cost us less money, but maybe they don't. And this supports where we want to go. So we have 4 principles in TUI, A, B, C. That's 3, but there's 2 Bs. So A is API, B is big data, but it's also blockchain, because that also began with B. and C as cloud. And those are the things that we're moving towards, and we are actively doing that. Now, going back to this model for a minute, what we were trying to conceive is that actually each of these domains sort of is independent and has an API associated with it, or a number of APIs, but basically this is the boundary of what we're doing. And we actually move towards a more agile world by creating an autonomous environment. So this enables us to split up the world. We have a single application in the UK and I that currently delivers inventory, reservation, product, price, contract. It's a monolith. Actually, if you actively split that up by pushing them into different autonomous teams who have a driver that's pulling the group together but actually has a reason to pull them apart, you can start to change the behavior of IT teams so they have an incentive to split up those monoliths and to start to strangle them. So that's another part of the principle. And this is where the APIs come in. Back to this one. So we actually had facts associated with these. Each person had put in their own data because we used the GDPR data that we created. It was generated by the business. We pushed down ownership of those fact sheets down to the business owner whose fact sheet it was. You know, that's their applications, their data, their responsibility. It's more than their responsibility for the data. They start to become product owners, so you start to move towards a more agile organization structure. We had a number of different capability models I showed you, but we put in the new domain structure as a new capability model. Actually, that's also very powerful. So we used a tag to separate them so you could see whichever one you want, but it means that you can have them existing concurrently. So we actually still have that complex UK model with all the layers and all that detail that we spent all that money with a consultancy on. We don't want to throw it away, but we have in parallel the domain model, and you can map between the two. And eventually, maybe, I'll get everybody to move completely to the domain model, because you don't need that level of detail for enterprise architecture. You need it for solution architecture, but that's not what this tool is about. It's about being able to summarize, bring the data together, make decisions, etc. So it's enabling us to move together for that. What else? We have responsibility in GDPR. So, okay, you're responsible for an application if you use it, but we have things that are run by group in the center. We have things that are run by different markets. Who's going to look after that application? All of these things supported by tags in LeanIX. So much data in there in so many different places helping to support what we do. But it's all of it just to enable the conversations and to enable pushing down ownership to the end users. So what next? Where are we going with all the other things that we've got and all the rest of the data that we've got? So we have now a single LeanIX repository. I said earlier that the German instance, actually, that had been imported from somewhere else. That was put in a separate instance of LeanIX. Well, we're busy now migrating that over. So we will actually genuinely have a single version of LeanIX. The convergence operation that we're happening, well, yeah, we've got so many of these applications. Gradually, the intention is to converge onto a single set of applications between, in the northern region, a single set in western, single in central, and probably eventually converge all together and we'll all be out of a job. Don't know, who knows? That's the way it goes, you go on to the next one. But at least we can now have the data that can push us down to do that. But then the next really exciting thing that we're doing, the C of our ABCs, is the cloud. So we moved our web stack to the cloud, and we have tags in our LeanIX instance that identify whether an application can or can't be moved to the cloud, and various factors that can determine whether that's likely. Obviously, there's some that don't need that are already there, the software as a service, and we've got legacy stuff that's really hard to go, and so on. So those decisions can start to be part of a conversation with the end users about what they need and where they can go. I'm so excited we can put this stuff in Confluence, because that's a big thing at TUI. We collaborate with Confluence, so I'm really, really keen for us to move on to doing that. But because we're moving to the cloud, and you'll probably hear later there'll be an AWS connector at some point, so we can start to collect that data automatically from the scripts. I'm not a techie, really. The scripts that create the instances in the cloud, and they have a YAML file in them. Does that mean anything to anyone? I hope I got it right anyway. And that will start to populate our LeanIX instance by putting the right tags in there. And again, this is about language, because we've got a single name for things. So when I first came into TUI, I said, we've got this application, it's called MongoDB. So what? You can't have an application called MongoDB. That's a technology. No, it's called MongoDB. Well, what is it? What does it do? It should be called what it does, not what the technology is. Now, of course, we've got 5 or 6 MongoDBs, but only one of them is called Bookings ODS, which is what it does. But you have this common name, and because everybody's seeing the reports and seeing the data all the time, they start to talk about the same things, and you talk about things in the same language, and that's what makes it worth doing enterprise architecture, because you actually can have these conversations. People start to understand what you're talking about. And the same with the AWS. So we will use the application names as they are saved in LeanIX, and so we can actually have a standard name for the applications that everybody uses around TUI. What else? Yes, common assessments of the applications. What it used to be exit and maintain and whatever it was that they now call retain, re-engineer, renovate and retire. Same set of things. And we can have common definitions between all of the markets. And then we're pushing down the ownership of the data down to the end users, as we've said. They start to take responsibility. They start to become proper product owners, pushing us down into a proper product organization. And they do it in markets together. So where in our model here, you have a UK and I group of people looking at customer identity. Now customer identity is a thing. It's a thing that exists, it's a domain, it's understood, it's known. And you can say, everybody who has an interest in customer identity, and by the way, this is what customer identity means, can all get together and talk together and collaborate about how we move together to the right solution for customer identity. And they get autonomy and ownership over where that goes. We can start to put in a single solution. There's some interesting things about this model that kind of don't fit with the way the organization looks. So you'll see we've got customer payment under finance. And that's an interesting question. Where should customer payment be? Any votes for under finance? Maybe. Maybe it should be under sales, because actually, where do you do your payment? Where's all your payment technology? It's all in the sales cluster. It's all on the website, and the website controls what that looks like. But payment should definitely be owned by finance. If you talk to anybody logically, there's no question that's where it should be. So this can start driving some of those conversations about saying, well, I know I operate your website and you think I should be looking after the security of your payment data, but actually, Mr. Accountant, I think that's your job. I think it's your responsibility to make sure that we're doing the right things in that place. And so the finance department should start to take responsibility for that. So actually the organization can start to change to the more strategic shape it should have, and the parts should migrate to where they should be. Where was I with our last few things that we were doing? Oh yes, reporting. So we have well, we do have a data lake now. It started as a bit of a dirty puddle, but we've got some data in it now, so I think we could genuinely say it's a little carp pond anyway. It will be a lake, and eventually it'll be an ocean, like the ocean of data that the big boys have. Because we collect loads of data about all sorts of random things that you wouldn't think about, like how fast aeroplanes fly from one place to another. That's Didn't know we knew that, but we do. And we can start to join up that data with other more useful data. Probably not how fast aeroplanes join, because I don't know that anybody else wants to know that, but about what our customers do. So we've got information about our website and about how well our customers behave and all of those things to help our marketing people, but also about what our customers do in their resorts, and therefore we can join up with that. And then there's finance data. Straw poll. Is anybody putting cost data in LeanIX? I'll talk to you later. Not many. That's a really interesting question. We're just beginning to explore this question because we've said, well, if we've got this organisation structure like this, domain structure like this, and potentially we now have a way of comparing across the different markets, so I told you we had accountants in TUI, yeah, we do. Wouldn't it be a good idea if we compared the cost across the different markets so we could see how well we're doing? Which is, yeah, that's a really good idea. But LeanIX is a collaborative tool. We give access to anybody in TUI. Anybody in TUI can have view access. It's joined up to our single sign-on, and anybody can go in and see what an application is. And the instructions are, if you want to know what an application does in TUI, just go and look it up. Yeah, there'll be a definition that tells you a bit about what it does. Ooh, so do you want to put all that finance data in and make it really visible to everybody? That's a slightly uncomfortable place to be in. Not sure that's where we want to go and what we want to do. So we've yet to sort some of those conversations out in terms of where we go next. So that's really our TUI journey and what we've done. They instructed me I had to leave time for questions, so I have. But I wonder if I'm going to get any.
First of all, thank you so much, Kati Gholam, for this great presentation. And I'm really curious about the talk later on of you two.